Billionaire Charles Montgomery lay in the sterility of his private hospital room, a thin blanket pulled up high, his breaths coming shallow and uneven. The walls were pale, unadorned, save for a single portrait of his sprawling estate. A world that once bustled with the laughter of gala guests, now silent except for the gentle hiss of oxygen from the tubes beside his bed. Charles had built his empire from nothing, transforming a modest shipping firm into a global powerhouse. Some called him ruthless. Others called him visionary in the boardroom. His word was law in his mansion. The rules were even stricter, but now none of that mattered. Age and illness had stolen the authority from his voice. His gray hair was thinned, his face lined with the stories of 84 long years. His 3 grown children, each dressed in tailored black, hovered near the door. A nurse, one of many who now cycled through the billionaire's final days, replaced the nearly empty saline bag. Charles stared at the ceiling, not registering the faces around him. The end seemed close. Yet something in his clouded eyes suggested unfinished business. Dr. Jensen entered quietly, reading vital signs. "Your family is here, Mr. Montgomery," he announced. Charles's lips barely moved. "Call Mary," he whispered. The children exchanged glances, confusion flickering between them. "Who, Father?" Emily, his eldest daughter, asked. "Mary Johnson." Charles's whisper cut the room like a cool breeze. "My maid." There was a silence heavier than the machinery humming beside the bed. The children grew tense, thinking of the loyal woman who had spent more years in their house than some of them had spent in the family home. To them, Mary was only a presence tidying up after their messes, rarely acknowledged unless something was misplaced or a meal was late. But for Charles, Mary meant something different. Through early mornings and late nights, celebrations and storms, Mary had always been there. She'd wiped spills and soothed fevers. She'd seen the family at their most vulnerable. She'd offered a soft word after business losses, a strong hand during household crises. Charles's children, raised among privilege, found it hard to understand why their father would ask for the maid in his final hours. Whispers began the moment Dr. Jensen motioned them into the hallway. Had Mary been hiding something about the old man's affairs? Was her loyalty a mask for old secrets? Back at her small apartment on the city's quieter side, Mary Johnson finished folding a stack of crisp uniforms. The tiny kitchen hum was interrupted by a knock at the door. When she opened it, a chauffeur in the Montgomery family's navy blue livery stood there. "Miss Johnson, Mr. Montgomery requests your company at the hospital. He's not well, and it seems urgent." Mary's heart skipped. Charles Montgomery had always been stern, yet there was a warmth in his eyes reserved just for her. She tucked her house keys into her purse and followed the chauffeur down the steps to the polished black car waiting. The city flashed by as she sat in anxious silence, her hands folded tight. She remembered the first day she'd entered the Montgomery mansion as a nervous young woman. 30 years, she thought. 30 years of service. 30 years of secrets, joy, and heartbreak. Security guards at the hospital recognized Mary immediately. They nodded respectfully as she passed through the bustling halls soon. She found herself facing the major suite reserved for the dying billionaire. Just beyond the glass door, she glimpsed the gathered family, the doctors in their white coats, and Charles, smaller than life, waited with years. She paused, smoothing her uniform and gathering her thoughts. What could he want with her after all this time? Her mind darted between worry and hope, fear that something was wrong, hope that old kindnesses had not been forgotten. She stepped into the room quietly. The family watched her, some with surprise, others with suspicion, ignoring them. Mary approached the bed and gave a respectful nod. Charles's eyes met hers, clearer and more alive than they'd been all week. For a moment, the hospital noises faded, and an old memory of laughter in the kitchen, of shared smiles over secret recipes, passed between them. Charles managed a weak smile. "You came," he breathed. Mary reached out and gently squeezed his frail hand. Tears glistened in her eyes as she realized this was more than just a summons. Something deeper pulled her here in that hospital room, where money and power melted away. Only the truth remained. The truth of long years of loyalty, sacrifice, and unspoken affection. Mary held Charles's hand as he closed his eyes, and for the first time in many days he looked peaceful. Maybe, just maybe, he could let go of his regrets as Mary sat by his side. The billionaire's family whispered at the doorway, wondering what this moment meant. For Charles and Mary, it was a quiet reunion, a gentle acknowledgement of a bond formed in secret and sealed at the end of a life. In his final hour, all the rules changed, and the person he reached for was the one who stood by him when nobody else saw. The black maid who was, in truth, so much more. The shock that spread through Charles Montgomery's family at the mention of Mary Johnson's name was palpable. Emily stepped back, her manicured fingers tightening around her phone, while Thomas leaned closer to the hospital bed, searching his father's tired eyes for hidden meaning. The family had gathered out of obligation, expecting final words about property and inheritance. Instead, they found themselves facing a question none could answer. Why did Charles want the maid? The hospital hallway bustled with doctors and nurses, but inside the suite, silence and suspicion filled the air. Emily, Thomas, and their younger brother Robert retreated to one corner, voices hushed but urgent. "Is it possible Mary knows something about Dad that we don't?" Thomas asked, eyebrows furrowing. Emily shrugged. "I don't trust this. She's been here for 30 years, but no one ever really talks to her." Robert, the youngest and usually indifferent, finally spoke up. "Maybe Dad owes her money, or maybe there's an old secret in the family." Their speculations grew wild, ranging from hidden affairs to stolen fortunes. It was the kind of dramatic suspicion that money breeds, unable to imagine loyalty when wealth is involved. Meanwhile, Mary waited in the hospital lobby. Every second dragged, Mary watched the clock tick and remembered small kindnesses from Charles over the years. A box of chocolates at Christmas, a rare smile after particularly stressful dinners. Yet she was also aware of her boundaries. She was the maid, always in the background, cleaning up scenes others left behind. Never part of the conversations, never asked for an opinion. In another part of the hospital, nurses whispered about the Montgomerys. One nurse described seeing Mary comfort Charles after a business loss. Another recalled nights when Mary's steady presence calmed tantrums that money could not fix. The staff wondered if Mary's presence now held the power to change something in the family's dynamics. These rumors added tension and curiosity that the family could feel pressing in from the walls. Emily was the first to voice the uncomfortable truth. What if Dad's last wish changes everything for us? Charles's children realized their lives could be upended by this moment. Their worries weren't about losing their father, but about losing what he left behind. In the corner, legal advisors huddled, worrying that the maid held knowledge that could rewrite the will or disrupt decades of careful planning. The family's lawyer steeled himself for a possible change in the inheritance. Every glance at Mary filled him with dread and doubt. Mary, escorted by the family's chauffeur, finally approached the suite. She entered with a gentle nod, meeting all eyes without flinching. Each child sized her up with suspicion, recalling years of silent service and remembering moments when Mary had comforted them silently. The weight of this unique gathering pressed heavily, yet Mary's thoughts remained with Charles, her employer and, in many ways, her quiet protector. The tension in the room thickened as Charles beckoned Mary to his bedside. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice weak but determined. The children tried to listen, hoping for a clue about their father's intentions. Instead, Mary and Charles shared private words in low tones, leaving the rest of the family frozen in suspense. With every minute, the family's anxiety transformed. Their whispered doubts became fears. Fears that Mary's influence could be greater than they ever imagined. The possibility that Charles could have left something more than gratitude haunted everyone present. Legal experts speculated quietly. Was this a simple act of kindness, or the prelude to a revelation that would alter the family's legacy forever? The hospital became a pressure cooker of expectations. Each member of the Montgomery family wrestled privately with their own thoughts. Robert wondered if his father regretted past choices. Thomas struggled with the idea of justice versus entitlement. Emily worried about public perception if the story reached the media. Outside, Mary waited for Charles to finish gathering his strength. In these tense hours, Mary remained composed and respectful. Her loyalty, forged from decades of work, stood in quiet contrast to the family's nervousness. What could be so important that the billionaire wanted her as his final guest? The answer waited just beyond the curtain, ready to shift the course of everything they thought they understood. In the air, anticipation grew. The story of the maid and the billionaire was no longer a secret reserved for a dying man. It was about to become the turning point for an entire dynasty. Changed by a single wish, the stage was set for revelations none could foresee. Each heartbeat in that suite echoed a lifetime, one that might be rewritten forever by what happened next. Part 3 of this story, told in basic English and third person, explores the emotional tension and unspoken truths that come to light when Mary is summoned to meet Charles in his final hours. The scene is unique and deeply human, focusing on the silent power dynamics, family suspicion, and Mary's quiet dignity. Every ending full stop is replaced with a comma for easy voiceover. As Mary stood outside the hospital suite, she felt the weight of decades pressing against her chest. The chauffeur guided her gently, but all Mary noticed was the awkward glances from the family. Their faces were tense, worried, uncertain, maybe angry. She wondered why they feared her so much for 30 years. She had moved quietly from room to room, cleaning, mending, helping. Her loyalty had been unspoken, her presence nearly invisible. Inside the hospital suite, Charles's children huddled together. They whispered ideas back and forth. Some believed Mary had come to claim a favor. Others worried she had knowledge that could wreck the will. In their eyes, Mary was a threat, not a comfort. Charles was waiting. His eyes met Mary's, searching for forgiveness and companionship. He gestured for her to come closer. The family resisted at first, but one of the doctors gently asked everyone else to step outside so Charles could have privacy. When they were alone, the air seemed thicker. Charles reached out a trembling hand. Mary took it. Her steady fingers calmed him. She had always offered support quietly. Now she was the anchor in the storm of his regret. Charles spoke in a voice that was tired but honest. "Mary, you know more about this family than anyone," he said. "You were there in the hard times when trust was fragile. You saw things even I chose to forget." He paused. Looking at her with respect rarely shown by a man of his status, Mary nodded. She remembered long nights spent washing away the stains of arguments, comforting the children when their parents' voices grew too loud. She saw more than she let on. Her job was not just about cleaning rooms, but protecting secrets that other people were too proud to face. Charles asked if she forgave him for all the years when her existence was pushed so far into the shadows. Mary simply squeezed his hand. In her eyes was something more powerful than wealth, understanding and kindness. Outside, the family peered through the glass. Each child felt the shift in power. Suddenly, Mary was not just the maid, but the keeper of their most valuable memories. Rumors grew in the corridor. Doctors and nurses exchanged looks. Someone wondered aloud what would happen if Charles revealed a family secret to Mary. Would the inheritance change? Would years of rivalry be exposed? Back in the room, Charles struggled to speak. He shared details of heartbreak and failures. Secrets never told to anyone else. He admitted his mistakes, confiding in Mary as if she were his last trusted friend. The billionaire's last moments were not about money, but about truth and peace. Mary listened. Her simple words, spoken slowly and gently, unraveled the pain that Charles had carried for so long, for the first time in years. His face softened, lines of worry melted away. The children, meanwhile, grew more anxious. Their imaginations ran wild. They pictured Mary as someone who could change everything, a quiet presence who might hold the fate of the family in her hands. Soon a nurse entered quietly. Signaling the end of the visit, Charles looked at Mary, gratitude shining in his tired eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. It was a thank you for loyalty, for silence, for humanity. Mary exited the room as she had entered, humble, steady, dignified. Her encounter with Charles would change everything. Outside, the family crowded her. Some tried kindness, some pressed with questions. Mary kept her voice gentle, refusing drama. Her answers had no anger, only truth. Charles' request for Mary, a black maid, to join him in his final hours rippled through the corridors and down into the world outside. It would be days before anyone learned the true reasons behind his wish. But in that moment, two people shared a peace seldom found in rooms full of power. The hospital stood silent, filled with a tension built on history, memory, and secrets. Charles's dying wish, and Mary's unwavering loyalty, set the stage for everything that would happen next. The simple act of bringing the maid to his bedside had shifted the foundations of the family. Forever. Mary stepped quietly into the hospital room, her shoes making no sound on the polished floor. Charles lay there, his face drawn with age and worry, but his eyes brightened at the sight of her. He managed a small smile that was genuine, untouched by the stiffness he often wore in front of his family. The family lingered at the doorway, but Charles had already asked the doctors to leave the two of them alone. Mary took a seat beside the bed, her posture straight out of respect but her gaze soft and warm. Charles's fingers trembled as he reached for her hand, and Mary took his with a gentle squeeze. In that moment, something shifted between them. 30 years of shared memories, spoken and unspoken, filled the silence. Mary spoke with honesty, asking if he had any pain. Charles nodded but said her presence brought comfort. He told her he remembered the time she saved his son from choking, or the nights she walked the hallways with a lantern when storms knocked out the power. It was as if every small act of kindness they'd lived through now became large, shining with importance. Mary remembered how she came into the Montgomery household. Nervous, young, unsure, she was met by suspicion. But Charles soon noticed her hard work and her gentle way with his children. She'd held Emily after nightmares, calmed Thomas during fever. Even Robert, the most stubborn, would slip her an occasional thank you note. The years stacked up, filled with moments that built trust, but never crossed into true friendship. Perhaps the world outside would never understand how a billionaire and his maid could have so many memories together. But Mary knew. Charles cleared his throat, the words coming slower now. He thanked Mary for her loyalty, for never betraying the family secrets. He spoke of the day his company almost collapsed, when Mary found him in the study and said, "It's not over until you stand up again." He admitted those words helped him make the decision to fight on. To anyone else, the moment would have seemed small, but to Charles it was life-changing. The tension outside the room grew. Emily pressed her ear to the door. Desperate for clues, Robert paced the hallway. Thomas typed messages to the family lawyer. One nurse shook her head, whispering that love and loyalty sometimes were more valuable than any legal contract. But within the room, Mary and Charles were wrapped in memories. Old regrets surfaced. Charles spoke of times when he'd been too harsh, too silent, too proud. Mary shook her head, telling him that what mattered was how he changed through the years. She saw not just the mistakes, but the growth. She forgave instantly, as she always did. The conversation moved to the children. Charles sighed deeply. Remembering moments he'd failed them, Mary tried to reassure him, reminding him that every parent has regrets. She noted how fiercely the children loved their father, even when they hid it behind arguments and worry. Her words soothed him more than any medicine the doctors could provide. Charles's breathing became slower. He asked Mary to remember him kindly. Mary promised. Her promise was humble, given without drama, but it held the weight of a lifetime. Charles asked her to help the family forgive each other. He wanted her to share with them the lessons of quiet strength and compassion she'd embodied. Mary sat quietly, holding his hand. She knew this was as close as she would come to being treated like a friend or a family member. She felt respected, seen, valued for all she'd given. The hospital room, usually cold and formal, now felt like a place of warmth and goodbye. Outside, a nurse told the family to wait. Inside, Charles let himself cry, not for fear but gratitude. He thanked Mary for being the bridge when the family was divided, for soothing anger and healing wounds invisible to the outside world. Mary listened, her own eyes wet. She told him his kindness, rare as it sometimes was, had always given her hope. When their time ended, Mary rose and gently adjusted his blanket. She whispered, "Rest now, sir. You are home." Charles closed his eyes, a small tear slipping down his wrinkled cheek. In that moment, the old man was not just a billionaire. He was a soul seeking forgiveness and peace. In her presence, he found it. Mary walked out, passing the anxious family with quiet grace. She did not share everything. Some moments were meant to stay between her and Charles, but her eyes held compassion even for those who doubted her. As Mary left, the hospital corridor seemed lighter, and the family sensed something unspoken had changed in their father's heart. In those final hours, a life's worth of memories and regrets were gently honored. The reunion between Charles and Mary was a moment of truth and kindness, never captured by the world outside, but never forgotten. In the gentle hush of the hospital room, Charles knew his time was slipping away. Every labored breath reminded him this was his last chance to shape the legacy he would leave behind. As Mary sat quietly by his side, an unusual calm settled upon Charles. He held her hand a little tighter, eyes searching her face for forgiveness and something deeper, a shared memory waiting to surface. The moment felt sacred. Charles began to speak in fragments, his voice raspy but clear. "There's a truth I need to share before I go," he said. His children lingered outside the door, curiosity and anxiety painting their faces. They pressed close, hoping to overhear words that might explain their father's strange final requests. Mary's brow furrowed. She had never asked for anything from Charles but honesty. He continued, "Many years ago you did something for our family you never spoke about. You saw something wrong and acted without hesitation. You returned that envelope even when it meant risking your job. That changed the course of our lives." Mary nodded, the memory clear. She remembered the envelope. A package of legal documents Charles had thought were stolen. If Mary hadn't found them and returned them discreetly, the scandal would have destroyed the company. She carried the secret with her for decades. Charles looked at her with wonder. "You saved my reputation, the business, and our future. Yet you never asked for recognition or reward. For 30 years, her loyalty and honesty had been the silent foundations of the Montgomery family's fortune. Charles's children had never known. They always saw Mary as background staff, rarely remembering her compassion or sacrifices. Now, as Charles lay dying, he finally revealed the story. His regret was palpable. "I should have thanked you sooner, Mary. I was too proud to admit I owed so much to you." "I wish I could go back." Mary patted his hand, her smile gentle. "You did what you could, sir. What mattered was you noticed even if it took time." Her tone was forgiving. In that hospital room, class and status dissolved, leaving only a human connection built from decades of shared hardship. Charles asked Mary why she'd helped. Her answer was simple. "Sometimes you know when a family falls apart. Sometimes you fix what you can." It wasn't about money or praise. It was because it was right. The answer moved Charles deeply. For all his success, it was Mary's basic goodness that gave him comfort now. His eyes filled with tears as the confession unfolded. Nurses paused in the hallway, sensing something important was happening inside. Charles wasn't just sharing his guilt, he was unburdening himself, passing his gratitude along before leaving the world. Mary's act of honesty echoed through the corridors, softening the judgments of even the skeptical staff. Outside, Emily, Thomas, and Robert grew impatient. They wondered why Charles trusted the maid more than his family. Their thoughts drifted back through the years, remembering school accidents, broken trophies, and secrets protected not by their father, but by Mary. The realization struck. The maid they had barely noticed shaped their lives in ways money never could. Charles squeezed Mary's hand again. "If I leave you anything, let it be the truth of your goodness. Share it with my children. Help them to be better. Don't let the past become their burden." Mary promised she would. Her heart felt heavy with responsibility, but light with forgiveness. For a while they simply sat together, the silence loaded with understanding. Charles looked around the room and whispered, "It was all built on people like you. I hope they understand that one day." Mary nodded. Her presence was his peace. As the visit ended, Charles's eyes grew distant. Mary stood, straightening her uniform. "I'll do my best, sir," she replied. With that, she left the room, passing through a gauntlet of anxious faces in the corridor. Her steps were slow, thoughtful, weighted by the story she now carried. The revelation, confessed in the last quiet hour, was a gift from the man who had always seemed untouchable. It changed how everyone present saw Mary, once the maid, now the protector of the family legacy. Charles's dying confession was not about money, but about healing. As Mary walked away, she felt certain that everything would change, not through wealth, but through the truth finally spoken aloud. After Charles Montgomery's secret was shared with Mary, the news of his unusual last wish began to ripple outward, spreading beyond hospital walls and into the world of the Montgomery family and beyond. The children's initial shock grew into a storm of questions and concerns. Whispered conversations between siblings became louder accusations. Family members wondered how Mary, once considered invisible, could now stand at the center of their inherited legacy. Emily was the first to react aloud. How could father trust her more than us? For years, their family had operated on traditions, assumptions, and secrets carefully wrapped away from the public eye. Now suddenly those traditions seemed fragile, as if an invisible web was unraveling beneath their feet. The siblings feared the consequences of this revelation on their inheritance and the reputation they had protected for decades. Mary, meanwhile, tried to keep her head down, moving steadily through a world that suddenly paid attention. Reporters, curious neighbors, and even some former employees reached out, wanting to know more about the maid who held such power in the billionaire's final hours. The sudden spotlight was uncomfortable. Mary was used to quietly doing her work while others took credit. She had never sought attention. but now it felt impossible to avoid. The hospital staff, too, found themselves caught in the wake of this drama. Nurses whispered about Mary's steadfastness and the strength she showed in those quiet moments with Charles. Medical professionals admired her compassion, but understood the tension when her story reached the family and the press. For some, it was a reminder that behind wealth and illness were deep human connections, often hidden and unappreciated. The Montgomery siblings grew more divided with each passing day. Thomas worried about the legal fallout, meeting his father's lawyers to understand any potential changes to the will. Robert began questioning the family's public image, fearing scandal. Emily kept a careful watch on social media buzz and news coverage. The family's once united front was cracking under the weight of suspicion and unknown truths. Mary's story took on a life of its own. Headlines questioned why the billionaire's last moments were shared with a maid, some praising Charles for his loyalty, others casting Mary as an opportunist. The pressure was intense, but Mary remained grounded, answering questions calmly and refusing to be drawn into drama. She knew that her truth was simple: loyalty, kindness, and courage in a world sometimes unforgiving. At a tense family meeting, Mary was invited to speak. The atmosphere was thick with unease. Many family members struggled to accept her presence, but Mary spoke with honesty and quiet strength. She shared memories of the family's private struggles, how she had helped through times of pain and loss. She spoke of Charles's gratitude and the lessons he asked her to pass on. It was a humble but powerful testimony. Emily admitted later that Mary's words softened something inside her. "I saw her not just as a maid, but as a keeper of our family's soul," she said. But others remained unconvinced, holding on to their doubts as a shield against change. The conflict revealed deeper fractures within the family, exposing resentments that had long gone unspoken. Outside the family, the community began to rally around Mary. Her story inspired conversations about race, class, and loyalty. Discussions about invisible workers and their real value emerged. For many, Mary's steadfastness was a lesson in dignity and strength. She became a symbol of the unseen people who silently shape our lives. Meanwhile, in legal offices, lawyers prepared for possible contestations of the will. The question was no longer if Mary would receive something, but how much. Charles had made clear his intentions. But the fight over money and power was inevitable. The legal battles would test loyalties and reveal aspects of the family hidden even from themselves. As days turned into weeks, Mary remained a calm presence, visiting the hospital, attending memorials, and speaking quietly with those who sought her counsel. Her life had changed dramatically, but her heart stayed true to her simple values. In the shadows of family drama and media frenzy, her quiet dignity shone most brightly. The impact of Charles's last wish stretched far beyond the hospital room. It challenged the Montgomery family's definition of loyalty and worth. It disrupted old power structures and invited a new understanding of what legacy means. For Mary, it was the start of a new chapter, a journey from the margins to a place of honor, earned not with wealth but with grace and truth. The day of the will reading arrived with a heavy silence hanging over the Montgomery estate. Charles Montgomery's grand mansion, usually buzzing with activity and celebration, now felt somber and unreal. The family gathered in the ornate living room, faces tight with anticipation and hidden fears. Lawyers and relatives filled the space, ready to hear the final and binding words of the wealthy patriarch. Emily, Thomas, and Robert exchanged glances, each pretending confidence yet inwardly uncertain. The unexpected inclusion of Mary Johnson in their father's last moments had already shaken their world. Now the question was how far Charles had gone to honor her. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read the will. As the words filled the room, eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Charles had left a significant portion of his fortune to Mary, a sum enough to change her life forever, but more than money. He attached conditions. Mary was to share the story of her loyalty and kindness publicly, to open the eyes of the family and the community to the strength found in loyalty beyond bloodlines and social rank. Emily's voice almost trembled. "This can't be real, he would never—" Thomas cut in. "We need to contest this." Their confidence was shaken but not broken. The idea that a maid who cleaned their home could now hold power over their inheritance was unacceptable to some. Mary sat quietly, hands folded, her expression calm but resolute. She knew this day might bring conflict, but was ready to stand for the truth Charles asked her to share. Throughout the reading, she looked directly at the family, not with challenge but with openness and hope. She wished not to take her claim but to illuminate. The family heatedly debated afterward. Some saw the gift as a betrayal, others as a long overdue recognition. Emily felt torn. Her love for her father clashed with the shock of his decision. Robert and Thomas made plans for legal action, but some younger cousins whispered support for Mary, hoping the future of the Montgomery legacy could be broader and more inclusive. Mary's story became the centerpiece of community conversations. Schools discussed the lessons of humility, loyalty, and courage she embodied. The news media followed every legal twist in family drama. The once invisible Maid was now a symbol of dignity and justice. Mary gave interviews not about money but about love and forgiveness. She spoke gently of the power of small acts done with great heart. Her message resonated widely, opening conversations about race, class, and the human bonds that connect us all. Many found hope in her story, a beacon that challenged old prejudices and assumptions. Meanwhile, inside the Montgomery household, healing and tension coexisted. Old wounds reopened, but some family members began to see Mary in a new light. She was no longer just staff, but a key part of their family's history. Her kindness and integrity became a standard to aspire to. Charles's final wishes had rewritten their family's story forever. The legal battles dragged on, but Mary remained dignified and calm. She did not seek to divide, only to honor the trust given to her. At times, the fight seemed daunting, but her quiet strength inspired those around her. Many respected her courage in standing up for what was right. As the months passed, the Montgomery family slowly adjusted. Some reconciled their feelings, others fought on. But the legacy was clear. Loyalty, truth, and kindness mattered above wealth and status. Charles's last wish had created a new chapter centered on respect and understanding. Mary continued to speak publicly, dedicated to honoring Charles's memory. Her life changed dramatically, but she remained grounded, focusing on every small kindness and every story of human connection she could share. In the end, Charles's final gift was not just money but a message that every person has value and deserves to be seen. The Montgomery family saga was transformed by one man's last words and one maid's unwavering loyalty. It was a story of redemption, love, and the power of truth to change lives and legacies forever. After Charles Montgomery passed away, the mansion felt both empty and changed. The children struggled to find their place in a family altered by one man's last wishes. Mary, once seen only in service, now stood as a pivotal figure in their shared history. The estate's grand halls echoed with whispers of the past and the promise of an uncertain future. Emily found herself caught between grief and confusion. The walls that once represented power now held memories of her father's unusual tenderness toward Mary. She realized that Charles's actions had not only challenged their views about loyalty and class, but had also begun to weave Mary into their family story in a way no one expected. Thomas, ever practical, wrestled with the legal and financial ramifications. Yet even he could not deny a subtle shift in how the family spoke about Mary. Robert, the youngest, surprised everyone by quietly defending Mary's role, saying she was part of Dad's world in ways we never understood. Outside the house, word spread quickly that Mary was no longer just a maid, but a valued keeper of the family's truth. Community members admired her dignity and courage. Seeing her receive recognition reminded many of the invisible hands that support the foundations of even the wealthiest lives. Discussions began about the meaning of family beyond bloodlines and the value of kindness and loyalty, often unseen by society. Mary embraced her new role with humility and strength, determined to honor Charles's wishes by promoting understanding and healing. The Montgomery family faced deep challenges. Old resentment surfaced as some family members resisted change, yet others sought peace by opening their hearts to new understandings. Family gatherings became moments of reconciliation and difficult conversations. As Mary shared stories of kindness and courage, she helped the family see the true meaning of legacy, not just wealth or power, but the bonds we build through trust and care. The legal battles gradually settled, with terms that recognized Mary's rightful place in the family legacy. Lawyers noted that Charles had clearly intended to elevate Mary not only financially, but socially. A fund was established in her name to support community programs focused on trust, loyalty, and kindness. As the Montgomery estate moved forward, it carried with it a renewed sense of justice and respect for those who serve quietly and faithfully. Mary's public talks inspired many. Her story became a beacon for those often overlooked. Her voice lent courage to countless others, reminding them that dignity and kindness were the true markers of worth. She traveled to schools, community centers, and business gatherings, teaching lessons learned from her life with Charles. Her message was simple but profound. It is not the riches we leave behind that matter most, but the way we treat others. Within the Montgomery house itself, changes were visible. Portraits of Mary joined those of Montgomery ancestors in the main hall, symbolizing a family transformed by truth and love. Emily, Thomas, and Robert each found their own ways to honor their father's wishes, setting aside old prejudices to embrace a broader and kinder vision of family. The mansion, once a place of secrets and old power, became a home where new stories of grace and understanding blossomed years later. Mary stood in the garden looking at the estate she had helped protect for so long. Though her journey from maid to matriarch was unexpected, it was a testament to the strength found in loyalty and truth. The flowers around her bloomed bright, a living metaphor for the family and legacy she now nurtured. Charles's last wish had indeed changed everything. Not just the flow of money, but the heart of what family means. Across town and beyond, Mary's story continued to inspire. It became a legend of redemption and respect, reminding everyone that even the smallest acts of kindness can shape the greatest legacies. The Montgomery family, once divided by class and suspicion, was now bound by a deeper understanding built on love and forgiveness. In every way that mattered, the black maid who had quietly held the family together was now its brightest light. The future held its unknowns, but one thing remained certain. The story of Charles and Mary would forever be told as a powerful reminder of the human capacity to change, forgive, and honor what truly lasts beyond wealth, fame, and last wishes. It was a legacy redefined, a family reborn, and a truth finally spoken aloud, transforming the lives touched by it forever.